because my family is really into WWE wrestling, and so we all have our entrance sound. So next time I do something like this, like be ready. I'll have some good music. But yes, as you can see, there's also an activity. So like Lizzie said, I'm also a teacher, and I've been out of the classroom formally for the last year. This is my first year not being involved with the school formally in some capacity for a super long time. Kind of like as long as I can remember. So even just setting out papers for everybody, it was this very throwback moment for me, and I was like, wow, this is wild feeling. But yes, so because I've been a teacher, I've never gotten to experience things like artist residencies before. So this is my first year ever being able to do something like this, just because of the time and everything. So it's been really fun to be able to, work on this and participate with it. I made a few notes here, so I'm just putting my little piece of scrap cardboard out there. Predominantly, I've always been and identified as being a printmaker and working with print media in some capacity. And then, even when I wrote my proposal for this, I was like, I'm going to be doing prints and books and making paper and doing all these things. And then I got here, and that was like not what my brain was doing at all. It was like this tiny little like echo in the back of my brain was just knocking and being like, remember when you used to do other things. And so even though I tried to like think of things in terms of printing here, it wasn't working. So that was totally fine. My process normally is making 20 different things simultaneously that don't really matter. Like I have all these little books and things that I've been making, like just like little accordion books with scraps, and like this one is like a little, like I was like, oh, maybe I'll make some like wings and birds with wings books and whatnot. And then I was just sitting in watercolor painting, like I had these Made Fair posters and I was just like painting, kind of doing my thing, thinking about all the prints I was gonna make. And then I was walking around the park one day in the last couple weeks, and something Molly said actually like echoed back in my brain, and it was just this kind of words. Stoney had asked about some trees that were down by the riverbank, and they had cages around them, and you mentioned like planting willow trees down there. I was like, I really hope it's willow, because that's like a whole part of this thing that I'm doing. And then I had a moment earlier today where I was like, really hope I'm not like remembering that wrong, because I have a whole thing about alliteration, and we're really working with the W's here. So okay, cool. But yes, so kind of jumping off also the stuff that Corey was just talking about and things that are relevant here is this idea of storytelling. And I used to tell people I wanted to be a storyteller when I was a kid, which was kind of cool. But I have in my past, and that little kind of echoey voice was this person who used to write a lot. And even when I played music and was in bands, I wrote, but I wasn't like the predominant writer for things like that. And so, yes, I've just been thinking a lot about that, and and writing and creating music a little bit more than my print form. When I went to school in Chicago, I had a professor who, we had an assignment where we had to, and this was like so many years ago, we had to go and collect language. That was like the assignment. And I'm a wildly literal person. If you're in our group chat, or if you have hung out with me in any capacity, I'm super, super literal. So I was like, I took the train for a day. I was just like writing down phrases and stories and things that people said, or like witnessing the breakup over the phone. You know, there's all these things that happened, and I was just like, writing all these things. And lots of other people / everybody in the class all took what they gathered and made something inspired by it in some capacity. So it was a sculpture class, right? They had these objects that they made, and then they were like, here's what I gathered, and here's my object that I made. And I was like, I'm gonna write a spoken word piece, and I'll like make a cool painting and then put the words on it. And my professor was like, yeah, that's cool, but this would be a lot cooler if you read it out loud. And at the time I was doing a lot of like poetry and spoken word, like presenting stuff like that frequently, so I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. I just stood up and I was like, and I like read it, you know, and it was a cool cadence and whatever, and everybody was like, oh, okay, like it was cool. And I was like, yes. I'm cool. And so then after that, all of my projects for the sculpture class were interactive performance pieces. And I feel like that is something that I super love and have forgotten about as part of my life, and I'm very excited to get back into. So I say all of that because the writing and art making is relevant to the processes that I'm working through right now. So along with the storytelling that kind of is natural to a historical site like this, I'm particularly interested in the plants and animals, especially the birds, which Dale and I have been throwing down on some bird traps. Super cool. I'm always like, what'd you see today, Dale? Like the other day I was like, I saw one bird today, and he's like, you're not looking hard enough. And I was like, oh yeah, you're accurate, you know, I'm just like, I've been just walking with my little notebook, you know, like walking around the park and sitting and stuff, but anyways, I love thinking about the oral histories and even the historians that you were talking about earlier. This idea of things traveling through generations. For me, I'm kind of thinking about and focusing a little bit more on animals and the idea of animals sharing their stories with each other. I went into this deep dive of like, how do birds know how to migrate? Like, what is this about, you know? And some of them just straight up like tell each other. They're like, hey, you're my kid. This is how we do it. And it's wild. There's so many other things. Some of them are like, the moon. What up, moon? You know, it's just bananas. So I was like, that's so cool that like the animals, you know, in whatever capacity they do, translate and share their processes with each other. I think that's very cool. So I would love to think of myself as not only a storyteller, but a story collector, because thinking back to that one like decade plus ago project where I rode a train and collected language, I love the idea of collecting stories from people. And that kind of focuses into and kind of transitions into my maybe third kind of idea that hopefully you're with me on this and you're following along. I have a big love and like history of playing and obsessively listening to folk music, especially when I was a kid. And I love the storytelling aspects of that. And I just think about, does anybody know who Utah Phillips is? Yes, okay. I loved Utah Phillips as a kid. I was like, he's like my grandpa. I love listening to him. I was obsessed with him and Ani DeFranco. They were like my two favorite people. And so when I got to see both of them, Utah right before he passed away, which was very cool. And I just love that those musicians, those types of musicians, you know, they're like fiddling around on their instruments and doing whatever, but they're talking and they're telling a story about this whole scenario, this whole thing that happened that led to this like 3-minute piece of music, you know, that they've accomplished and that they're sharing with you. And I think that's really lovely. So for me, I want to continue to write and tell stories. Like I have that little piece of language that I collected from Molly, which is super cool and I'm super stoked about. And that's like pretty much a song. I just have to like write the music and everything to it. And then my goal over the long term, like right now I'm working on collecting stories and that's part of my research here. Like the other day I was talking to Dale and he was telling me about a kingfisher that got caught in some fishing line and he like saved his life. It was so cool. And all I could see was like, oh, there's a little stop motion animation that I'd like to make for that. I used to do a lot of stop motion, I used to teach that. And I started doing it again and now I'm like, oh, this is gonna be I'm gonna obsess over this for the next year. So I'd love to collect stories, write songs, and then create music and animation for them. And that's kind of my long-term goal throughout the next year. And so I think our show is like in February, right? So my goal for now is that first one that I've been talking about with the willows, and I think that's really lovely because what I've ended up writing is a little bit about the idea of birds migrating and leaving a place and sharing their shared knowledge with each other, but then either the place that they go to or the place that they're coming back to either no longer exists or it's changed, and a lot of the changes are because of habitat destruction, because of humans. So I just think about these poor animals that are just like just going about our day, but we can't figure out where to go because we don't have a home anymore. So, on that note, part of my process is like just making things that don't matter while I'm thinking about the things that do. Because I'll have so many things happening at the same time, and sometimes they're really like big or heavy thoughts, and that's just kind of a lot. So it's nice to just make stuff. Like these little books I was making when we had those kids come in and kind of share. They were on a field trip and they popped in and they were just chatting with us, and I was like, okay, I don't have time to like think deeply, but here I'm just like, I'm just collaging and making something and just kind of working through the process of doing whatever it is. And then actually Stony, your kiddo, Lee, came in and like colored in the book, and he was like super excited about that. Liz, you colored in the book with him as well. So it's lovely to have these objects and artifacts, I think, to hold things along the way. But yes, that's kind of my spiel about my thoughts. Are there any questions about that before we kind of move into the making element? Because, surprise, I teachered y'all. We're going to be making something, and you can participate in like my grand scheme if you like, but you don't have to. Is there any questions about any of that? Yeah?
I see the accordion book. Do you make a flip book? Because I'm thinking animation, that lends itself to
Yeah.
the thing moving.
Totally. I have in the past, but mostly just with kids. I've never actually done it on my own. They've got some in the, I thought it was one of those little animal trading cards, but it's like a flip book in there. I was like, ooh, I like the owl one. But yeah, I haven't done that, but that would be super cool. I would love to, my ideas, because I was making these prints, and I was just like cutting out my, to be like, what is this gonna look like? And I cut out all these little letters are cut out, because I made a little stop motion animation with the letters and whatnot. But I really want to draw and paint the birds and the trees and the plants in the stories that I want to tell, and then cut them all out like really meticulously and animate them, but then turn them into some sort of book afterwards. So that could definitely be part of it. But yes.
It feels to me like you've got all three elements of what we do here.
Yeah.
Like the journals, right? So we're talking about books.
Mm-hmm.
And the oral history, you're talking about what the birds passed down to one another. But of
Yeah.
course, the stories of the Selis have been passed down for years and years and years. And then the natural history as well. I'm really sort of excited to see how it comes out after being processed through that K-Rad brain.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad that it feels exciting, because even when and Cora was the first person I talked to about it, and I was like, all right. I think you were like, lay it on me, and I was like, here's all my thoughts. Does this make sense? Because in my mind, they all make sense together, and it just feels very like a cohesive thing. Yes, cool. I'm glad.
I also feel like I should let folks who don't know who Dale is, that she's referencing.
Oh, yeah.
Dale is our Uber volunteer here. He comes every day. We joke that Dale knows all the animals here by their first name because he's just here all the time. He takes a lot of photos for us. He's retired from the Forest Service. And he does have amazing stories of this place. So I'm super glad that you guys have connected, because
I'm stoked. I was working him. I was like, all right, Dale, I want you to tell me all the weird things. But I think I just asked him what his favorite bird was. He was outside, and I had just done a lap, and he's like, thought about it for a second, and that's when he told me the story of the kingfisher. And again, to tell the whole story, I mean, immediately afterwards, I was like, oh, I want to animate that. Like, I think that'd be a really, like, I love playing the cello, and I was like, oh, like a beautiful, like this sad and like eerie cello music with that would be so lovely. But he, so he was like, it was like later in the day, but not nighttime, maybe dusk or something, and he said he was walking around and he heard this like horrible sound, and it was like a scream, and he saw something kind of hanging by the water, and it was a kingfisher that got wrapped up in fishing line, because people fish here and their lines break and whatnot, but they don't necessarily put the energy and care into taking the things away that can be harmful to nature. And so he said he couldn't reach it. He found one of the teepee poles and like knocked at the line. The line fell down. He was able to grab the bird. He said it just like lashed onto his hand with his beak, and he just kind of used that, like unraveled it in whatever capacity he could, and then it just flew away. I was like, oh, Dale, Superman Dale. Superman Dale. That was so good. Yeah, but I was like, that's lovely. And I also just really love and appreciate stories from elders in my life. Like, my Aunt Dorothy is kind of like my grandma, and I used to go visit her in St. Louis, Missouri, like once a year when I was old enough to be an autonomous human and drive, you know, be like, I'm doing this. But I recorded a lot of the stuff that she said. So I have these like recordings of her, and I used them in my like thesis show when I was in college, and I had some prints of her, and yeah, recordings of her that my friend, this is like before smartphones were like a thing, and you know, technology is as it is. So I had like a friend like hotwire some like weird speakers from like things that we took apart, you know? And so we put the speakers kind of behind the print, so there were these little whispers. You just had to, like, as you got closer, you could kind of hear my aunt just talking about the price of groceries, you know, in like the 60s or whatever. It was super cool. So, you know, she's passed away, and so it's really lovely to have access to some of that stuff. And so I know not everybody has, you know, somebody to tell their stories to, and I feel like it's really lovely to be able to be a person that might capture those things for people. So that would be my goal. That's so, I am a storyteller now that I'm a grown up. So if anybody is interested in participating, I have these little flyers. There's a few of them, you're welcome to take one if you like, but the QR code leads you to a set of questions, and they can be prompts for storytelling, but you don't have to use them at all in any capacity. And my thought is, while you are making stuff, I will read some of those out to you so that you can think about them a little bit while we're making. Because we're going to be making a small book today, because that's a part of all the stuff that I do, and I love book making. And I think a lot of times people that maybe aren't involved in art making can be a little bit intimidated by that. Especially, like, I've been a teacher for so long, and I have kids that are like, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, that's okay. My life motto is that nothing is that serious. It's not even real half the time. Like, let's just go for it. So yes, we're going to kind of step by step. I'm going to very much teacher you in just a second, and then I've got a bunch of supplies here to kind of enjoy for probably only about 15 minutes, honestly, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I also think that limiting time and supplies is kind of nice, because you just have to do it. You can't think that much about it. So if you'd like to grab your long piece of paper, and I will say it exactly like I have for students, because you never know. You're going to line up both of the corners the best you can and crease it down the middle. And so you'll get two pieces. You should have a scissors at your table. And I like to cut along the seam like this, because I don't like the way the fold looks on the paper when I make something out of it later. But that's because I'm kind of neurotic about stuff. So you can cut along the seam like that, or if it's easier for you, you can open it up and cut it straight down the middle. But either way, you should have two pieces of paper like this that you are then going to be folding. If you're done with that, I feel very comfortable just folding the paper and folding them together. But if you're like, I don't know about this, I don't make a lot of stuff, you just do one at a time. But you're gonna fold it in half and in half again. So you're gonna have this about 3 by 4. It's technically 4 1/4 by 3 1/2. That's just what it ended up being. So we're going to have these two kind of like either zigzag papers. They don't really look exactly correct, which is totally fine. Okay. Yay! So you're going to see they have, like, one of them is very obviously incorrect. Like, I have this final piece here. I've got this like great kind of S or Z shape, depending on which direction it is when you're looking at it. So I'm just going to hold that piece in my hand and fold this one opposite, so that it's still even, but now I have like the proper kind of accordion shape. And we're going to go ahead and do that with both of them. Okay. All right. Your microphone is going to touch all my little vocal tics, which are like, because my students in high school I taught at used to be like, Miss Rad, like, they would always comment on my sounds that I made while I was doing stuff. Okay, there's some glue sticks at the table. If you don't want to use a glue stick, I also have some glue bottles and stuff up here. But on one of the ends, you're just going to take your glue stick, and I'm obviously doing it on my body, so it's not like the easiest to do. But I'm going to cover that puppy with some glue, and then whatever piece you end up gluing down, just make sure that it still makes that zigzag. If I flipped it the other way, like if I took this and flipped it the other way, it would be kind of weird. Does that make sense? Give me some like eyeballs if you're confused. Yeah. Perfect. So now you should just have a long accordion. Okay. At your tables also, there is some cardstock like paper. Those are just thicker for your cover, so you can take your glue stick and glue one on the top and one on the bottom, so you have like a hardcover book. I was kind of trying to fast cut cardboard earlier, but it was just really ugly looking, so I didn't want to give regular humans ugly stuff. Yeah. So one of the little thick ones on one side, one on the other side. And that way it's like it's just like a mental tactile thing. Like now it's a book because there's a cover, a back cover. Perfect. Awesome. So now you are a bookmaker as well. And I'm very excited about that. And hopefully you have positive feelings as well. So, one of the things I love to do is pick like just a couple weird things that I find, collage style, just like, oh, that's a cool color, oh, I like that mountain, oh, a cowboy, whatever, cool. So I have up here some random magazine pages. You can dig through them or I can literally just dump some at the table, but I would love for you to be very free feeling about like tearing stuff. I know. Don't worry about it. You can do it. I believe in you. You can meticulously cut stuff if you like, but I would love for you not to stress or think too much about what it's going to look like. And I would love for you to think about layering stuff if you want. But also it's your book and you can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. If you do choose to participate in my story collecting, one of the things you can do is upload a photo or a video. So if you decide to use this book for writing in some capacity, writing a story or telling a story or responding to one of my prompts in some way, then I would love for you to photograph it or send a video of it. But you don't have to if you don't want to. It's all up to you. This is a random bin of all the markers that I had in my